Liverpool in the 1880s was a very different place to today's Liverpool. Whilst there were enormous amounts of wealth in the city centre, the suburbs were poverty-stricken and some people lived in very poor conditions. It was common for people to walk around in shabby, torn clothing without shoes. There wasn't much for people to do back then. Liverpool didn't have the wide range of entertainment venues and options that it has today. Electricity had only been introduced to the city 2 years before Liverpool Walton was opened. Life was all quite boring, but then the army came. It brought hope with the gospel message. The Salvation Army Liverpool Walton was founded in March 1881. On Sunday, March 27th of that year, Captain Josiah Parsons Taylor, aged 26, opened Salvation Army Corps number 187, then known as Liverpool 2. They conducted the first worship meeting in a converted stable on Walton Road. The first Salvation Army in the city, Liverpool Toxteth Corps, caused quite a stir, being received both positively and negatively by the general public. This was certainly no different with Walton. The opening meeting was described in the war cry by Captain Mums. Grand opening of Liverpool 2, Walton, was half-picked and very rough indeed. 12 souls were saved, and there were hundreds who attended the opening. The corps flourished quickly, reaching the lowest of classes in Walton within weeks, something Liverpool Toxteth had taken months to do. Within those first few years, the corps found different ways of spreading the gospel. The very first Sunday school meetings were held in February 1883 and saw a huge growth in children's attendance and membership of the corps. The corps also established its very own brass band, and so Liverpool Walton Band was commissioned in 1885 under bandmaster J. Lyons. However, much of the band's musical foundation was laid by Charles Lockett, bandmaster for 43 years from 1896 till 1939. The band is just as relevant as it was nearly 140 years ago when it was established, and plays a vital role in the worship at Liverpool Walton. Currently under the leadership of Peter Elliott, the band consists of about 30 members, ranging in age from mid-teens to 80 plus. The corps continued to rent the site on Walton Road from 1881 until 1890, then moving to a larger converted stable on Dane Street. The corps remained on Dane Street for 5 years and then moved back to Walton Road in 1895. Here is the only known photo of the original hall, the converted stable, on Walton Road. In the photo, we see Corps Officer Adjutant Fenwick and Soldier Mr. Stafford standing in the centre of the hall. This photo was taken for a newspaper a few weeks before the hall was demolished in 1911 to make way for a new purpose-built building. Just look at the fittings and fixtures in that hall. Old wooden pews and gas lighting, no electricity and no running water. Not something we're used to these days. By the mid-1890s, Liverpool Walton was one of the larger corps in the city, with average Sunday attendances of between 300 and 500 in its halls, and thousands in its open-air services. By then, the Salvation Army, being the most popular it had been so far, had 11 corps and approximately 5,000 Salvationists in the city of Liverpool. Going back to the corps premises, as mentioned before, by 1911 the corps was able to purchase the land on which it was situated and demolished the old stable. Plans for a new hall were drawn up, and the Citadel was built and then opened in 1915, costing £3,504. That's roughly £415,000 in today's money. Its design was very similar to many other Salvation Army citadels and fortresses built between the 1890s and the 1920s. By 1930, 12 of the 17 corps in Liverpool had had their buildings replaced in the same style. Some of these traditional red brick citadels still exist in Liverpool today. Liverpool Walton's new Citadel Worship Hall was designed to seat 200 or 400 standing, and the Young People's Hall was designed to seat 100 or 200 standing. New ministries were found on the opening of this new building in 1915. Liverpool Walton did regular meals for up to 600 poor people from the surrounding areas, both children and the elderly, throughout the 1920s and the 1930s. The 1920s also saw the commissioning of Liverpool Walton String Band and Liverpool Walton Songsters. An extract from the core history book reads, "A number of comrades who formed a string band were commissioned by Staff Captain Ching. These comrades rendered a good programme under their leader, Band Secretary Joseph Lawson. A new asset was added to the core activities in the shape of songsters, who were commissioned by Mrs. Staff Captain Ching. These comrades rendered a real good account of themselves under Mrs. Commandant Hannam." The songsters was commissioned by Mrs. Staff Captain Ching and gave its inaugural festival on Tuesday the 6th of December 1921 under the leadership of Mrs. Commandant Hannam. 1 week later, her son, Stanley Hannam, was commissioned as the first official songster leader of the brigade. To date, there have been a total of 13 songster leaders since 1921. Here is one of the Corps' historically favourite photos of the songsters in 1924, just 3 years after its commissioning. Just look at all those laughing, joking faces. This shows the spirit of Walton that still exists today. Just like the band, the songsters continues to play a vital role in our worship at Liverpool Walton. Currently under the leadership of Lindsay Lacey, at last count the songsters had 56 members and contributes to worship weekly. Heading back to the history at the core, the building on Walton Road became in need of repair because of age and repeated vandalism. Dry rot, roofing issues, falling plaster and mould had begun to plague the building. A new building was first discussed in 1983, but it wasn't until 1987 that the plans for our current building had been finalised. Core members felt that it was best to move away from Walton Road at this time. They recalled that there was no real community spirit in the area, as a lot of the housing around the old site had been demolished, and so people had moved to the newer estates away from the centre of Walton. It also had no parking, and the main road was unsafe for children to cross. And so, the search for the new location commenced. It took the Corps a number of years to find land within Walton to build upon. After 2 to 3 years of praying and searching the streets, an area known as the Triangle on Cavendish Drive, the main road through a new housing estate, was offered to the army by the council. The council had planned to build a pub for the community on the site, along with a post office and a supermarket, but wanted to know what the army would build if they had the opportunity. The officer at the time, Ray Ebden, told the councilmen, "We will build a church for the community." And so, the prayers were answered and construction on the new building on the Triangle started on 12th of October 1987. Here are some of the original photos of the construction, showing the groundworks and the gradual progress on the new building. Corps members recall visiting the sites for the first time and wondering whether it would be big enough. As soon as the walls went up, however, it was pretty evident that we would be able to fit in. Completion was reached just over a year later in November 1988. The overall cost of the project came to £306,725. That's nearly £700,000 in today's money. For the first time in a very long time, the Corps had a brand new, modern and much more adaptable space to worship and serve the city from. The new building's worship hall was designed to comfortably seat some 250 plus worshippers each Sunday. This could be increased to 400 by opening up the movable wall system between the main worship hall and the young people's hall. Corps members recall the smell of the fresh paint on the walls upon first visiting and the overall sense of a new era. Back on Walton Road, after 74 years of use, the last weekend in the Citadel took place on the 14th and 15th of January 1989. The theme for the weekend was, "We'll praise him for all that he's done and trust him for all that's to come." Thousands of people came and found God at both buildings on Walton Road, and thousands of souls were saved for Christ. The works and memories from the ministry within these halls still live on today. The building was then put up for sale. Many alternative uses were considered, even an application to turn the building into a nightclub. This application was obviously declined in respect to the building's history and the property deeds stating that alcohol was not to be consumed on the premises. Eventually, a trader bought the site. Sadly though, not long after, in April 1990, the building mysteriously burnt down and partially collapsed. It was later deemed unsalvageable and was demolished. Today, McDonald's occupies the land where the old hall once stood. The weekend following the last in Walton Road was the official beginning of a new era for the Corps. The new and current building on Cavendish Drive was opened on Saturday the 21st of January 1989 by Commissioner and Mrs Edward Reed, Principal of the International College of Officers in London. The opening and dedication ceremony was attended by over 400 people with standing room only. A celebration festival followed the opening ceremony in the evening, again attended by over 400 people. The opening began with an open-air service in the car park and the street to officially open the building. The congregation then entered the building for the dedication and Thanksgiving service. In this service, thanks was given to the architects and the builders, the fundraisers and the donors, Corps members and the officers and DHQ staff, but most of all and most importantly, thanks to God for blessing the Corps with such an incredible building. The songsters sang, the band played, and Commissioner Edward Reed addressed the congregation.
Believers are living stones built together. We heard from Ephesians chapter 2, that great statement about the foundation stones being laid and we all being formed together into a temple for the habitation of God by His Spirit. Thank you, gentlemen and ladies, for those thanks.
In amongst attendees were staff from territorial and divisional headquarters, Liverpool City officials and council members, and members of the Walton Ministers Fraternal. You might even see some familiar faces who still attend the Corps today. The evening celebration festival took place on the same day at 7 p.m, and like the morning was a very happy event. Again, it drew a large number of people who saw a variety of items given by the Liverpool Walton sections. Like in the afternoon service, there was worship, the band played, the songsters sang, and this time the young people sections appeared, with both the singing company singing beautifully, and the young people's band playing their instruments very well. The brownies and guides gave a drama entitled The Rainbow People. The young people's corps sang a song, complete with colourful props, umbrellas and pom-poms. The fellowship singers and the male voices also sang. A brand new piano was dedicated to worship, and Commissioner Edward Reed addressed the congregation again. It really was a joyous occasion. This was evident in the worship. Take a look here at the Corps singing a traditional army favourite, I Want to Tell You What the Lord Has Done. From this night onwards marked a new era for the Corps in its new location. Once moved and settled at Cavendish Drive, the Corps went through a period of re-identification and over a space of time adapted to the needs of the local community in its new location. A small community programme was started up in the building in the early 90s, which involved the establishment of a parent and toddler group once a week, a body and soul group, and some other activities for children, youth and over 60s. This all happened in the building's Young People's Hall and Lounge. Core members recall thinking that the new activities would have quite some interest, but didn't quite expect them to be as well attended as they actually were. So obviously, it was a huge shock to the youth workers when hundreds of kids turned up from the estate for the first Wednesday night youth club. Sunday services also saw a big increase in attendance as new families began attending from the estate. Over the remainder of the 1990s, the need to cater even more for the community was recognised as the community programme grew. As it grew, toward the end of the 90s, it became obvious that the building was no longer ideal for the number of people entering it throughout the week. More space was needed to house the programme, and the building, now over a decade old, needed a bit of an update. After a study into the needs of the community in 2001, an extension was designed and added to the original build on Cavendish Drive. Building work commenced in 2004. It heavily altered the appearance of the building and more than doubled it in size. The extension contained facilities for the new community centre to host the ever-growing community programme. These facilities included a new main entrance, reception and foyer, 3 new general purpose rooms, a second community hall, extra offices for the additional staff required to run the centre, a second and larger kitchen, and an IT suite. The original 1989 part of the building was also renovated at this time. This involved reconfiguring the main worship hall, dividing one of the original general purpose rooms into 4 smaller rooms, and giving the rest of the building a much needed general facelift. The newly extended building and community centre was opened in a dedication ceremony on July 2nd, 2005 by Commissioners Keith and Pauline Banks. The newly opened community centre quickly became an even busier hub of activity. The Core teamed up with Liverpool Adult Learning Services and offered a range of GCSE and BTEC courses, as well as simple interest courses. Many subjects were on offer, such as maths, English, history, languages and IT, and more practical subjects such as dressmaking and cooking. As well as all of this, the well-established groups such as parents and toddlers that has existed since the Core's relocation continued to run and grow. As well as this, for the first time, the Core offered a self-service cafe, which was open for the groups, classes and courses that used the building. The success of the community centre again led to a number of new people attending the Core on Sundays. Through helping others in educational and practical ways, people had come and found the love of God. As time went on, new initiatives were started. In 2012, the community centre teamed up with the North Liverpool Food Bank and since then has been helping to feed those in the city who would otherwise have struggled to do so. In 2013, the Hub Coffee Shop was opened. Run by volunteers from the Core, the coffee shop has helped to build relationships with the people in the community. It provides a place for people to socialise. Greater partnerships were built between the Core and the Children's Centre, and many other different social care and educational agencies who began using the building for groups during the week. The Core is constantly adapting to the needs and changes of the local community. There was no bigger change than that of the COVID-19 pandemic. We could no longer meet in person, something that we've never ever experienced before. Despite all of this, our doors have remained open since the start, practically supporting those who are in need. We are still here, and we are still serving. Thanks to modern technology and gifted members, the church and community centre has been able to continue to operate online. Our virtual community centre can be found on Facebook, as all of our church services and music can be accessed on our YouTube channel. All glory, all praise, all thanks belong to our amazing God, who has blessed us abundantly over the years. Our future is secure as we trust in His promises and His faithfulness. Many changes may have happened over the years, but our mission and ministry remains the same: to save souls, grow saints, and serve suffering humanity.